Dear fellow Eritreans, like every Eritrean family, I was raised to be honest and value truthfulness. I was taught to be honorable by not lying, or being involved in deceptive behavior, sneakiness, or covering up what should be brought to light. Having said this, I share this short clip with a clean consciousness and humble heart. Since my parents are supporters of the regime in Asmara, I chose to stay anonymous out of respect for them. However, on the other hand, I can't ignore that I have been struggling with my own internal sentiments despite the strong opinions of those I share at home. But since this is something that has been brewing for quite some time, I feel compelled to share this with my fellow Eritreans, and I'm sure that I'll get a good number of listeners who are equally open-minded and can respect my opinion. I was born in Europe, as most of the YPFDJ are, and I was a member of this group as it's on their records. So much so, when I first visited Eritrea around 2009, I felt an intense sense of home. However, my third trip to Asmara in mid-2018 was eye-opening, and beyond that it was unsettling and left me disturbed. Upon my return in 2018, my mom picked me up from the airport, and on our way home she asked me how my trip was and about her relatives who are in Asmara and in the villages. I avoided her question and I asked her how my father and brothers and sisters were. She paused and realized I dodged her question, and judging from her expression, she found my mannerism unusual. She didn't persist and simply played it off like my lack of sleep was to blame. She calmly said, "You seem very tired from the long trip. We will talk about it later on after you get adjusted and over your jet lag. Just recline your car seat and stretch your legs." When we reached home, I went straight to bed. I could feel my mom checking up on me from time to time as she passed my room and as I was not deep into sleep. My mother, in her thoughtfulness and consideration for how exhausted I must have been, made sure to leave a note on my door for my dad and siblings to not wake me. As the evening hours passed and everyone in the house was in bed, I woke up to the sleeping habits of the Asmara time zone that I became accustomed to. As I made my way downstairs for an early morning snack and my mom heard I was up, she took this as an opportunity to have the conversation she was eager to have earlier on. I knew she was desperate to hear about her relatives, and she asked me, "How is my mom? And how do you find my sisters?" I told her that her sisters are okay and grandma is also in good health, and showed her few pictures that I took, and she started crying immediately. I said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I wish I didn't showed you the pictures, but this is something that I can't cover up." I knew that the pictures showcased the neglect that the elderly experience since the support from the younger family members was void. The picture was showing as my grandmother withering away. Our conversation shifted and my mom asked me to tell her about how the people see the peace process that started with Ethiopia. "Mom, if I'm going to tell you the truth, which is how you raised me and my brothers and sisters, free of lies and cover up, the truth is, I'm very much saddened and disappointed to see how the people in the cities and rural areas that I visited are living. It's astonishing that their living conditions are worse than my first visit in 2009 and second visit in 2014, unthinkable since things should improve with the passage of time. There is too much cover-up going on, while the reality on the ground is different. The most nagging thing and what really worries me is the future of the country. As it's now, I cannot visualize how Eritrea is going to survive as a country without its people, especially with the declining number of the youth who are the future bearers of any nation. It looks to me that the chain between the youth who are going to replace the aging population is cut off, whether it's due to a shadowy force or simply societal norms are changing. Furthermore, I notice because of this disconnect, the flow of values and standards that trickle from the top, down, from old to young, and from government to those who it governs are mute. For this, I obviously think the country needs some kind of change. While sharing this with my mom, all she could do is speechlessly hang her head down. But as I continued, the subject being too sensitive and difficult, she reached a point where it was all she could take. She firmly said, "I've heard you, now go to your bed, but make sure not to say anything about what you told me to your siblings and especially to your YPFDJ friends." I reassured her with an okay and went to bed. Now, to those of you who don't know what YPFDJ is, it stands for Young People's Front for Democracy and Justice, and it's an ultranationalist Eritrean diaspora youth organization which is directly affiliated with the parent organization that is ruling Eritrea. Dear fellow Eritreans, what I'm trying to share with my listeners is something that has been bothering me for a long time, specifically the statements of the YPFDJ, which you can find it on their website. The vision statement says as follows. YPFDJ's vision is to serve the interests of Eritrea, through a value-based, strong, conscious and patriotic youth movement. Based on the YPFDJ vision, the Cambridge Dictionary defines patriotism as a feeling of loving your country more than any other and being proud of it. If that is the case, how can it be plausible, and to what degree can the YPFDJ be more patriotic more than the true Eritrean patriots who are actually in trenches for the last 28 years and who missed their own entire youth? In continuation, the second item out of the 6 national vision statements is political democracy. I doubt that if we need to unpack what democracy is, unless this version of democracy never exists. Speaking of political democracy, in our household, we are 6 family members, 2 parents and 4 children, and all of us vote every election year, and the only family member that is not casting the vote is our dog named Deagle, who always accompanies us to the voting centers. For security purpose, I would like you to know that the family size and name of the dog has been altered. If you read about the mission statement on the same website, I don't understand why the PFDJ is trying to adhere and build its ideology outside the country while the young Eritrean youth are leaving in a forced labor inside their own country. And, why is that such a heavy investment on the YPFDJ required, while the regular army of the country doesn't even receive a proper salary at all? Moving along to the value of statement on YPFDJ website, which reads as follows. Love of country and people, nationalism or patriotism is a main factor that brings the Eritrean youth together under YPFDJ to serve the nation and create a better Eritrea. Speaking of love of the country, while I was a second-year student, I told my mom that I'm ready and willing to go to Sawa and serve my country even in the front lines of the disputed area on the border with Ethiopia. It took her few minutes to respond to my request, and before she even say a word, her facial expression was enough to understand what her response would be. Anyways, she said, listen, I want you concentrate only in your education and I don't want to hear you saying that anymore. After few minutes, she came closer and hugged me, and while rubbing my back she said, you know, once you graduate and have your first degree and have 2 to 3 years of work experience, you can contribute by volunteering for 6 months to work in Asmara. Not to disappoint her, I said okay mom. But my conscience was asking me, when will that Eritrean mother back home get to send her child who is currently in the battlefield trenches, to pursue higher education? Wouldn't that Eritrean mother like to keep her son or daughter close, in the household and call her kids honey, with the same affection my mother gives me? It's been several nights of unanswered questions, inner dialogue, and internal conflict. I didn't stop asking myself, why is there a youth organization needed externally and none inside the country? Why is the Biddo Tour anniversary that are planned to be held year after year in the metropolitan cities of Europe and North America, with dance and entertainment, while the true sons and daughters that needs entertainment and a break from theater endless military service are the youth in Eritrea? Starting this moment, I considered myself as an ex-YPFDJ member, and I'm breaking up my silence first in my own house. Dad and Mom, I ask you to unite with your people and say enough is enough. Finally, to my dear YPFDJ members, if you truly believe and love Eritrea as your country, it's time to turn over the page, and the people of Eritrea wants you to act on their behalf. Thanks for listening.